Welcome to another episode of Owning Her Health. Today's episode 35, and it is our second one here in the new year, and it features an Aussie who actually approached me to be on this podcast because she saw some stuff with the Goddess Wisdom, and she does wonderful work with a couple of things, a process of sacred guidance, working on what she calls kind of like psychology for the soul, tantric work, which if you are familiar with yoga, you know that, that's a lot of the work of Kundalini yoga. If you're not familiar with yoga, then maybe you're thinking of, some sort of sexual thing or something, because that's how it was marketed. And that's such a small piece of it. Really what that is psychosexuality. And honestly, a lot of what I talk about when I'm talking about that masculine and feminine mix and working that into a unification, that's really kind of what we work on through the energetic body of psychosocial aspect in Kundalini with the energy and the forces and the prana and our vitality, because really our vitality, our life force is this mix. And so Elise works with that. One thing also that she works with is alignment with the heart, so like bringing everything to the mind space, but alignment with the heart, which she finds is a primary need. And I just thought that was a really wonderful thing. And she has a lot of her journey in her writing. She's on her second book right now, which we discussed a little bit. Her work as a writer, her work as an international model, an author, at this point, and doing the work of the sacred divine. And this really, I have a nice intro in the beginning, so I don't want to double the intro here, but really, this is one of those episodes that if you're not understanding masculine, feminine, how that works in terms of real deep soul work, the stuff getting in your way, and this is actually one of those great episodes for the guys in your life to listen to as well, because we get in our own way so much. And so much of the reason why I went more into soul healing is because I realized in the physical model, there's a limitation. There is a limitation. You can't, it's like a car, not that I'm saying our body is just like, is simplified as a car, because it is so complex, especially if you're a woman with the hormone cycles and all of this stuff. Not that men don't have them, but they're not cycling as frequently in so many different cycles at once that need to work kind of like cogwheels, pushing one versus the other. But honestly, if you are just fixing the pieces, if you're just looking at, we have so many damn specialists and things like that, right? And I'm just looking at the foot. I'm just a toe doctor. And you forget that toe and its representation, its angulation, it's the way it's transmitting the forces has to do so much more with what's not the toe than the actual toe. You can really start fixing the alignment of the toe and the way the toe, functions, maybe even how it grows its nail. But let me tell you something, that is going to have maybe some impact feeding back, but the habits and the things coming on from the rest of everything else into that toe, if you don't address some of the reasons why, the root cause of that toe drifting off to the side like that, and you just straighten out that toe, you're going to end up with either something else screaming at you that was the next level of what the dysfunction was, because you just moved the problem to the next thing, or you're going to have it habitually come back, which again, if I'm a podiatrist surgeon, I may not have a problem with that. That might, whatever, yeah, I might, I don't necessarily study how all of that relates head to toe. I would need to be working with, let's say, a very skilled, physical therapist that's really into orthopedics and maybe even to running and feet and things like that to really put that together. So it's not like I'm trying to get you back on my surgery roster, but the thing is, I'm ignorant to that level. And so I may say, oh, look, it just happens, it happens. It doesn't just happen. You don't get a bunion in your toe because it just happens. So, I really enjoyed this talk with Elise, and I think that you will too, in her approach to kind of working on how we can optimize our living, how we can be happy, in our personal trauma and personal story, which might sound really foreign to you. So buckle up, like I always say, download this podcast and get on it. Let me know what you think in the comments over on the Libsyn show notes. And I'm going to start bringing this over to the website. I've been in transition a little bit in terms of getting my new stuff out and the new platform for the online training academies. And so that's going to get beefed up in 2018. That's one of my personal missions, and I'm going to start bringing you and inviting you over there to the vlog conversations, because I wanted them to be two-way. I really do, and I welcome you in this community, and I thank you so much for when I do get an email and a comment. So definitely comment, tell me what you're thinking and what you'd like to see in the future. All right, guys, Owning Her Health is on right now.
Welcome to this episode of Owning Her Health with your host, Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. Join Lisa as she starts the conversation on what it really takes to become a healthy, wealthy, and whole CEO of your life. Listen in to real talk by real lady leaders in all walks of life as they open up on personal health stories, wealth, career, and feminine abundant living. Learn how to grow by owning your body, expanding your mind, and aligning your soul with the purpose only you can pursue in this world. Happiness begins with owning her health right now.
Welcome, everyone. As you heard in the intro, I have the wonderful Elise Carr here, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. So I'm on the East Coast of America. She's all the way across. Right now, when I was recording this, I'm on Tuesday night. She's on Friday morning. I just find that whole time lapse thing. It's just so funny because time's just an illusion, and it just proves it to you when you're doing these podcasts and you're speaking to somebody from your future. It's kind of cool. But so Elise Carr is on today, and as I said in the intro, she's pretty much has quite a story of getting to where she is with her goddess wisdom, modeling and studying, going for her undergrad, then deciding to go into international modeling, then going on and having, her own health story and her own love story and going through that whole entire thing. So she's right up the goddess tribe vibe. She saw it and she contacted me, and I was like, as soon as I saw her stuff, I was like, yes, this is one of those goddess chats. So thank you so much, Elise, for being here. Why don't you let everyone know who you are and what you're doing now in the world?
Sure. Thank you for having me, beautiful Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
What I'm doing in the world, my work at the moment is pretty much in three areas when I work with clients, and that's broken up into sacred guidance, Tantra, and healing. So as for the healing kind of perspective, I bring in my Reiki Master's work. I bring in my work with all different modalities, essentially, depending on what people want, because we can do things via Skype and we can do things in person. Everything, I just want to say, is fully clothed and it's absolutely no genital touch. It's not my desire to go into that space. To me, it's more important to raise energy normally into a heart space and also work on the mind as well. Not just leave it on the body, not just leave it on the astral emotional either. So there's that door if that calls to people, because many people go, I want a healing, I've got this going on, and that resonates with them. For those who perhaps want to do something a little bit different and want to explore the tantric path, Tantra is about weaving sacred sexuality and spirituality really in the pursuit of oneness, of unity. There's a bit of a misconception it's all sex. It's not. That's like just dipping your toe into the ocean. That is Tantra.
Because they think that's all that the relationship is based on.
With themselves or with anyone for that matter. And that's often because a lot of people are guided and driven by that we say the sex impulse or the animal nature, which is that second chakra that we chatted about just in our pre-chat before. So getting people who are in couples, want to be in a relationship, aren't in a relationship, however it is, it doesn't matter. I work with women, men, and those in a relationship, mainly assisting them in whatever roadblocks are in their way, but also if there's trauma that's perhaps stopping one partner and it's affecting the relationship. There's so many different factors. It's very bespoke. It's very personalized, and I make a very concerted effort to meet people exactly where they are. And that's not too dissimilar to sacred guidance, which I offer as well, but that's more like psychology for the soul, you might look at it. So while we don't ignore the body, we don't ignore anything physical, we don't ignore the emotions and astral, we want to work ideally moving up to a mind space, because that is where the power is, but we need that in alignment with heart. And we definitely need that in alignment with the body, because the body has to learn to work with that. So it's a lot about alignment to ideally get to your truth, your unique essence, the beauty that is you and no one else. And to me, that's actually the soul. So they're kind of like three doors that I offer people, and wherever they want to go, they're going to go where they're meant to. But however they want to start, they can choose what resonates with them. So I kind of got that side of things, and then my writing on the other, writing my second book at the moment.
I know. So that's tell us a little bit about those books, because the first book, I was listening to a podcast you had done like a year and a half ago, a Connie Chapman's podcast or interview. I'm not quite sure if it was video or audio, but you had mentioned that you were, writing this book, and that it took you like 10 years of because you needed to live your story, your heroine journey. And
it's still going, darling.
Yeah. And I just think that's great, because I'm one of those people too. I'm like, I've been writing this book that's probably 3 or 4 books. Like once I get this first one, there's going to be actually like 4 probably in a series that I can publish.
And that's totally possible. I love the sound of that, for the record. Keep me posted on that, Lisa.
I will.
Yeah, it has been an incredible journey. And the reason why I started writing my book was actually because I was at a massive crossroads. And you kind of touched on this change I went through, and I was an international model. I was a foreign correspondent journalist working in Europe and Asia, and I came home, and after modeling internationally, and when I was over there, for the record, I wasn't into the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I haven't touched drugs in my life. Personal choice, each to their own. But that wasn't my thing. It was actually overworking, being completely separated from loved ones, being emotionally deprived in some way. I was away from my partner at the time. And also I wasn't stimulating my mind. It was very body centric, and my soul was not nourished. That was clear. And when I had an ultimatum from my partner at the time to come home, because you can't have a long distance relationship forever, I was actually hospitalized within a couple of days, and there was a cyst on my ovary that ruptured, and this kind of sent toxins through my body. And as a result, my heart decided to flatline 4 times. So I did become a case study in the hospital. And ironically enough, the cardiologist told me I was disgustingly healthy, because each time my heart started again on its own without any stimulation. But in hindsight, and obviously coming through recovery, from ICU to just being homebound for a little while, I realized in hindsight that it was, interestingly enough, my sex center, that womb space, that creativity, that connection to one-on-one relationships and nurturing, and to be able to express myself and who I choose to be in the world. And then my heart space, that place of that most unique essence and sacred beauty that is a woman. And these are the 2 places that weren't too happy. So I knew then I had to make a change. And that's when I went back into my master's and studied communication and cultural politics and women's studies, and expanded from there. And this was a long process. And then obviously added to my kind of sacred toolbox and finished my Reiki Masters and all these other bits and pieces. And it was in this time that I also needed something. And before I even enrolled in university and got accepted, it was a few weeks, where I felt so stuck. Everything that I thought I was ripped away from me. I was no longer a girlfriend because my partner left me. I wasn't able to model in Fashion Week because, quite frankly, I was struggling to walk again and drive a car, let alone shave my own legs and wash my hair.
Yeah, priorities.
Yeah, and I couldn't get a real job, as they termed it, with my degree. So everything I thought I was stripped away. And the reality is we aren't any of those things anyway. And I had to come to terms with that at 22, and then realize I needed something. And it was a conversation with my auntie, who lives in England at the time, saying, why don't you take all these epic emails you used to send us, because this is before Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all social media, and write a fab book, as she put it. And so I started writing this book, and now it's still going, because I'm finally ready now to get the right literary agent, because there's been so many changes along the way, and get the right publisher, and ideally get it out there when it's meant to. I've had to let go of this time frame.
Right.
But that's kind of an epic journey in itself, but it had to happen. And through the writing process, I've processed that experience. I've been able to release the pain, the emotion, the trauma from it. It's also helped me look at different relationships from fresh eyes and fresh perspective as well. So that's why we often, encourage people who are at the very beginning stages of their path to journal, or to write poetry, or to express themselves. And for some people, it's writing a book, or like yourself, maybe it's going to be 4 books in a row in that beautiful series. It can be a very cathartic and beautiful release. And for me, there was a time where I was almost living this character, even though I fictionalized her, Celine. We seem to have a lot in common, this young girl and I. I'm just like the big sister now, because I'm obviously many years older than her, but I wasn't at the time. So it can be beautiful. And I find writing is a non-negotiable part of my life to express, and writing articles and whatever it is, it's something that's always going to be a part of me, because I've realized that's the key essence that nourishes my soul. And we all have to find that one thing that is us. I thought before I was going to be a TV anchor woman. That wasn't going to nourish my soul.
Right. Look at the younger, because when I'm hearing the story of finding boundaries, seeing them and maybe seeing them at a different place. And, when we're young, we've got that maiden fire, or even as a young child, where I find like our energy sort of like neutral. It could go either way. And then when we pick that path of the feminine divine, maybe to be more of our compass, and we go into, that whole fiery, younger, go, 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 everything looks so big. Then we get to this stage, which whether you are birthing a child or birthing a business or birthing a creative, website such as your own with the StellaMuse, was that website almost, because you said it was kind of like you, a fictional sort of alter ego for you. Who did you see there? Did you see her as the young, fiery maiden sister? Did you see her more of the mothering, like just a love, self-love? Or did you see her even more as like a wise matriarch person to kind of come through? Or did you see her very young, of like the child that's free to just be who she is and do what she wants?
Oh, so beautiful. I love all the archetypes speak. I guess I was juggling too, because Celine was my heroine in the book Runway that is coming to fruition soon. So that was a woman coming of age, and definitely the maiden finding her way, exhausting every avenue and exhausting herself mentally, emotionally, until she actually discovers spiritual essence and connection. So there's that side. As for StellaMuse, which was kind of birthed during my master's, because I had to create something when I was doing, the final dissertation and thesis write-up, that was the ultimate, I suppose. That to me, when I was even creating the name StellaMuse, was about starring inspiration, being that shining light, that guiding light. And over the years of my business, that hasn't changed. To me, being a light in the darkness for someone, whether it's a woman or a man or a couple, whatever it is, just reminding them that they have that light within themselves. That when we're stuck in the dark night of the soul, as we call it, when we're stuck in trauma, when we can't seem to find our way out, when we just need a reminder sometimes, it doesn't even have to be that deep, whatever it is for that person. Sometimes we need someone who may have just walked that path one step ahead of them or 1,000 steps ahead of them, who can just shine that light and hold that light and beam that light for them. To me, that's what StellaMuse is about. So I guess archetypally speaking, I kind of saw her as almost like a high priestess if we looked at the tarot. And she bridges the two worlds, because she's living a human experience. She's also a soul, and she can, like a shaman, a shaman, I suppose, who can have that harmony between this world and that world. And to me, to have a full experience in this lifetime, that is what I find to be essential, because we can't deny the fact we have a body. We can't deny the fact we've got to make a living or whatever it is, but we can't deny also we're souls. And we have a spiritual purpose and we have a spiritual calling, and we need to fulfill that to actually ultimately feel fulfilled. Because all the designer bags and shoes and fast cars and fabulous trips to the south of France do not a spiritual life make, and definitely do not bring fulfillment. And I think that's a big part of what StellaMuse is, the light and the balance. And that balance is also the inner balance of masculine and feminine.
Yes.
Because we have to have that harmony within us. That to me is what sacred union is, first and foremost, within us as individuals. And that sacred union, when or if you choose to merge with a beloved, whether that's in marriage or in an actual sacred ceremony or however. Because we have to have physical, whether we look at that as genitals, we have to have heart, the astral, the emotional, we have to have mind and soul. And if you have all of that in alignment and connection, you will have a sacred and divine relationship. That for most people is totally challenging and totally unrealistic. For others, they want to work at it, and it can take years. It can take years.
And so much of it is that rush into, I guess, seeing someone else as we want something in our life, so we go to something else or external to get that. But maybe we don't know what that is really merging with. I see that all the time, manifested in a physical form, such as, let's say, a sexual dysfunction, or even just pain in key areas, or a cancer coming up in a gynecological way. And you look at the story and you're just like, you see almost that disconnect with that feminine flow, masculine. I call it like a tilt. I don't think it's ever going to be, what balance seems like there's equality on everything, but it's really never that. It's always, in my mind, this ability to adapt and flow and therefore evolve with the situation. And that makes someone feel very empowered and not so fearful of change, because we're all so scared of change. But it gets down to being where if you can't look in a mirror and see your wholeness, it's really tough to expect somebody else to see that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's such a beautiful point, Lisa, because it's not even just, say, the physical thing, and we're being more accepting now of different skin colors and body shapes and all this kind of thing. And I speak from a place of being in the fashion industry still and seeing that, but also just every day. That's one part of it, but that's paddle pool. That's baby stuff, really. Right. We have to go so much further beyond that. And that's why I love you kind of talk about this balance, because sometimes I see us like a pendulum. And we've, as women, let's say, and the divine feminine, we've been pushed one side of the pendulum for so long. When you think of the rape and the pillaging and the suppression and patriarchy coming in, the complete suppression of the goddess, the complete suppression of the feminine being equal and powerful in its own right, to then kind of swinging the ultimate other side, which has almost been women feeling they have to be masculine,
right?
If they don't choose to, for the record, just feeling like they have to be, like almost forced into it to be seen and heard. And now we're coming back to kind of like a gentle harmony, even oscillating still, but more centralized, more harmonious, more in balance, even though it's fluctuating like a heartbeat, right?
Right.
To understand that there's a unique essence within us, that the feminine is powerful, and that, yes, we have to accept our bodies and all their divine loveliness, but that we have to tap into that which is greater. That's within us.
Because we
can't learn to awaken that within.
Exactly. Beautifully put, because I was just having a conversation actually with a bunch of physical therapists, women in physical therapy here in America. And, they were discussing that exact thing, feeling ignored in some posts, some tags on certain posts and things like that. And it got into the conversation. Somebody posted about, needing to, us needing to like speak up and do these sort of things, but we're still on this very safe page of just women. And I interjected saying, what we need to do is just have these conversations, these very open, empowered conversations, not at men, but like regardless of them, like just be having them wherever the heck, whatever page, whatever, because I sometimes think they just can't see it also. Like there's things like I can't see because I just never, it's just never been in my head, like as a child.
Yeah, we're ignorant. We can be ignorant of a lot of things.
Exactly. We both know from the tantric and then yogic kind of mindsets and philosophies that there's just this level of Maya where it's not that you're trying to be, passive or ignoring. You just literally don't even know it exists yet. And it takes us, our ownership of what it is we actually want to be seen as, to show them what it is we're talking about, because they can't conceptualize. We've never shown it. I call that the curvy hustle. And as opposed to like that linear thing where, everything go to A to B. We were taught that, especially, I'm 45 years old. I feel like that was all of my Generation X was like the epitome of that kind. What you were saying is like this extreme with this confusion of feminism there. So I was always like, so what should I be? Should I be a Martha Stewart? Or should I be an Oprah Winfrey? Or should I be a Gloria Steinem? Because
that's what I was thinking. Exactly, Gloria Steinem. Exactly right. And that is challenging. But now you've lived through that. The beauty is that you get to be a woman who now gets to share with other women who perhaps didn't even understand that shuffle, and younger women especially as well who are coming up. This is the beauty, I think, of us having walked the path, having lived through certain traumas, challenges, obstacles, whatever it is. That is the gift in the challenge. That is the gift in the pain. That is the gift in trauma. And I love that. In hindsight, of course, when you're swimming in it.
It's never pretty going through, which is why people run.
Definitely. But then there's that 1% of us who know you have to go through it. And we learn this in the yogic path. We learn this in the tantric path. There's many disciplines or schools or beliefs that explore this, that we have to go through. You have to go through in order to evolve and grow. And this is why we call it the school of life. We're not here to have an easy ride. You can have a so-called easy ride, but you're not going to grow and evolve. And you're never going to feel nourished. You're never going to feel fulfilled. You're never going to feel complete.
Right. So, and I don't know who convinced us we were supposed to have an easy ride, because if anybody ever like actually read or looked at what happens to you through childbirth, like not as the mother, I mean as the baby. Like you already had, it seemed like death was upon you. These four walls coming in, all of a sudden, like it was like chaos. Your heart's beating, you're getting squished. You think so you get out and it starts off hard, people. It's just,
and then you're stuck on Earth.
It's supposed to be easy.
Definitely. And this isn't a beautiful place anymore. I mean, Earth is beautiful, but it's the people in it. And as for the reason why things are the way they are, that's because of patriarchy. That's because of capitalism. That's because of the constant push for consumerism. Just look at your Instagram feed. Just connect to some social media. Just put the television on. We are bombarded. We're not, naive to this anymore. Most of us have an understanding that, I'm being marketed to throughout your entire life. That's constant programming. That's why they call it TV programs. Right. You are being programmed. So just as we know in certain philosophies and beliefs and ways of life, we have to unlearn these conditions. We have to unlearn that you have to somehow be this perfect, menage a trois of Oprah and Gloria and Martha. You don't have to be that. You can be who you choose to be. Right. And it's very challenging, and religion and politics and all these things we feel we need to kind of squish ourselves into. It's almost like sometimes like yoga pants, you got to sausage yourself into them sometimes. It's like, I just don't want to wear any pants.
Right. I'm wearing the loose stuff. I hear you.
Take it off.
So tell me a little bit. So you moved in through your own story and understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, really literally getting back to what makes us, in that form of feminine, what looks like us, how we feel life. And you're writing this second book, with, Yoni-Heart-Mind Power. Where is that coming from? And like, what are you hoping to do with that book? What type of wisdom are you hoping to share with that book?
Yeah. To be honest, it's definitely in its formation stages. I mean, I've got like 28 chapters for the 28-day cycle, which, as we know, not everyone has a 28-day cycle, but I happen to like 28. It's my birthday. So the chapters are down, the content's down. I'm going to shift and move things around, but I've kind of got this idea that it's going to be a flow through the cycles and seasons of a woman's moon time.
Love that.
And I want to honor the feminine. I want to honor we can call it the power, but I like to think of also the vulnerability and the strength at the same time, and the sadness and the glory and the beauty and the whole menage of everything that a woman is. I want it to be a celebration of women. It will, of course, be whatever it's meant to be. As we know, these things seem to take on a life of their own as they unfold. And I don't want to force anything. So right. I put it to the side sometimes, and I'll write other things. And even some of the articles that I share right now on StellaMuse.com, they're going to be weaved into the book as well. So it's like a diamond like we are. It's like a lotus like we are. It's multifaceted, it's multi-petaled. And eventually the idea is for it to get deep enough to go into that deepest part of us, which to me I see as the jewel in the lotus, which is that kind of like the perfume. It's the je ne sais quoi of a woman that no other woman on the planet has. Everyone has this unique essence that is her, and most women die with that within them. And this is what we hear, like, your soul has a song, or most people like have the music within them and they take it to the grave. We understand this concept. We've heard of it. It's played out in movies, in archetypal perspectives, but it's very true. And I feel like many women and men, but dealing with women at the moment, are missing out on knowing who they really are, why they're really here, and that it's okay to explore that and begin to embody that and own it and then share it, because that's when we get to be of service. And to me, along this path, that is one of our greatest things, is to, yes, study and learn and grow and have our practices, but we have to serve, because we're not islands. We're here to unify. We're here to become the one soul, the one fabric, and to guide each other and help each other. So to me, that comes full circle in all the work I do, whether it's an interview like this, because we are going to ideally serve, even if it's one person who listens, or the book you write, or whatever it is, a small event, a one-on-one session. To me, it has to come back to service and contributing to the greater good, the great plan, however we term it.
Definitely. And I always say that with my clients. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, you're taking so much. Like if I was in a clinical thing and they had a moment, I'm like, no, this is why I went off on my own, because the traditional system and Western model wouldn't allow me to have this time. Like, this is valuable therapeutics for me because this is your story. Like I'm a guide kind of thing. But the one thing I would always say with them is like, why do you think I got all these degrees on my wall and whatever? So I can keep it in my back pocket? Like it doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense for me to just have a lot of information in here or even in my body as my body keeps the score. That, book by Bessel van der Kolk. If I learn something, it's not for me to like, okay, move on. It's obviously something to share, especially when you're flipping the pain like you're describing, and then turning that pain into a passion project, and then expecting that passion project to be a profit. We have to, like you said, we need that balance with understanding that it's not all, we have to do something with that feminine wisdom and bring it to light. And the only way is to kind of take that more masculine, linear return on investment, and so that we can be sustained. Because ultimately we want, especially as entrepreneurs, we want that safety and, the protection and then the support. That's
and as women, we want that too. All women want to be
just people.
safe.
Like, that's kind of the cell. Every cell pretty much wants that, like this at the cellular level. And when you're speaking, what I'm hearing you talk about is really that is duality. I think that's our advantage. In fact, I think that's a superpower that women, or the XX, the duality of XX versus XY, is that there's an inherent wisdom in duality. So we can see both sides of the coin, and choose. We can say, I think sometimes speaking with men, it seems that they're not as good at that. Like it's one or the other, and they can't understand how it could be two things at once. Because I know the discussion that's gone wrong with my husband to some extent was that I was like, yeah, but you could be meaning, like they don't, the communication styles. I can see the duality, and that's a very yogic kind of thing. Like I can see how pain and joy come from that same coin, to
absolutely.
flip. But sometimes I think men sometimes are just like, it's black, like it's red, and you're like, no, it's mahogany, and they're like, no, it's red.
I think that's like the nuances of life.
Right.
And because the masculine, even if it's a woman or a man, however you identify, the masculine in its essence is a doer. They don't stop. It's like, what's next? And you keep going, you keep pushing through, and you keep achieving, you keep succeeding. Whereas the feminine is being. There is a presence. There's a flow, there's time, I'm going to do this over here, and then I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to be this. And it's very different. And when we slow down and tap into that feminine, which we all need to, even men need to honor some feminine time, whether it's getting on the yoga mat or cooking dinner sometimes, whatever that is for them, they resonate with. But it's when we do that we begin to slow down, that we have the opportunity to create the stillness and the silence and the calm to go within. And that's when we see even more. And we know this through meditation. That's the absolute gateway to all, really. No matter how you explore that and what form you pick it up, that is the way. But unless we're going to create the time and space to do that and go within and honor our truth and that journey, the journey within, or awakening within, as I like to call it, things aren't going to shift. And you're going to probably find yourself slipping into masculine mode, constantly doing, never slowing down enough to actually decipher that, actually it is mahogany. Or actually there's a nuance here that I didn't see before. Or to understand that joy and pain or darkness and light is on the same spectrum.
Exactly, because exactly true, perfectly put, because it's the vibrancy or the vitality. I think when we're talking about our energy being low or not being happy, I think it's just sometimes we want to say it's something we don't have, but it really is probably a disconnect with that vitality and that vibrancy and those little things. Those little things that's why I notice those little things, because that's something that, why do you care about that little thing? I notice it. I don't know. I don't even know if I care about it. It just pops out. It pops out and I notice it. So that's really, really cool. So if you could get in your little pod and go 10 years in the future and look back and speak to Elise now, what would you hope you were saying to her? The wisdom of, let's say, a decade further, some more life, some more things, lived out some of those dreams already or whatnot. What are you hoping you hear her say?
Just a reminder, really, that no matter what, because I'd like to think things would have shifted greatly in that time, that you're having a human experience, but you're a soul, that you are loved and that you are love. That to me is the most important thing, because I know 10 years in the future, Elise will be serving. I know she'll be coming from heart. I know she'll be wearing all different hats, as she already is now. Speaking of myself in third person is peculiar, but anyway. But that fundamental, that constant coming back and exploring that to greater depths than ever before, I know is going to be paramount. And communicating that in a digestible, practical, easy way for people who are perhaps just on the beginning of the path to understand. That's important. Even though, you know, you might be then up on your mountain and people are still living in the mud of illusions, Maya, desire, conflict, drama. You know, we can't always come down on the mountain, because sometimes you're going to be called for doing greater things. But there's going to be someone that you're connected with who's going to be able to be your messenger. So there's always got to be a connection between the two, no matter how separate we become, however you want to deem that. And as long as there's service there, as long as there's heart there, as long as there's connection there, and ultimately you are living for the greater good, I think that's the most important thing. So reminding myself that that's how it's going to be.
That sounds...
And I've committed to that.
That's a really great way. I really like the way you say, like, or explaining that messenger in between, because I think a lot of women, when they're rising, they get kind of caught up in like who they'll leave behind and who will not have their service, whether it be the kids or even like with me, I did that a couple years ago when I closed my center. I got a real strong message that it was time, message, mission accomplished at this level. You need to actually be working now with the fellow guides. I knew I needed to find the other medicine women and the compassionate men that love them. And I said, it's not going to happen, this four walls of this utopia that I've created. As wonderful as this was to do something else. This was to inspire or to prove something or to connect with people and whatever at some level, but now it was going to be something else. So sometimes we feel like, but you're not going to do this anymore, or where can I get this, where they can't get it. And in particular, women seem to like hold themselves small, even if it's just a money thing. They absolutely they kind of almost don't let them, because what friends are they going to leave behind, or what family, they might be abandoning or be abandoned by having a different level. Wherever they're at.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's wonderful that you can also relate to that on a professional level as well, because many women do experience this, and I see this in my clients as well. I guess I find that we have to remind ourselves that what is meant to die away will die away. The body's designed even to decompose. We're not going to be youthful and look 22 for our whole lives. We're going to be 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, ideally, and beyond. The body's going to change. Relationships do break up. Things do die off. Careers end. We shift and evolve, because all these things aren't meant to last. They're meant to change and grow. That can be painful, because sometimes even a relationship feels like a second skin, or when it gets ripped off us, it's debilitating and heartbreaking and life-shattering. And I'm sure we've both been there, Lisa.
Oh yeah, you don't get to be a medicine woman without that. I mean, you just can't.
Right.
You don't get to. I feel like you don't get to go into the pearly gates of heaven with like a bunch of sins. Like you did. That's another level,
And then above heaven, you don't get there either.
Exactly. Like you just there's a graduation. I'm not for like no child left behind and just let them go through. Let's make sure they know what they need to know from one level to get to the next level.
Yeah. And in this peeling away and this letting go, it's like I see us as that lotus flower unfurling. And until we come to the full opening, we're not going to understand that the only thing that sustains forever is the soul. It's the soul. It goes on. This body is going to go. Your personality, it's going to go. It's probably going to change ideally at one point. All the emotions, all the pain, all the trauma, all the mind stuff, it's all going to go. You are ultimately just going to be a soul. So when you think of the minuscule tiny grain of sand that we are in this experience, and the little bubble of our life that we live in and get so caught up in, sometimes we can step back and be witness, get some perspective, and understand that me leaving my practice at this time, or perhaps me stepping away and becoming a full-time mom, or whatever it is that is your story and your truth in this moment, that's okay. If you are choosing it, and it's what you really feel you're called to do, even if you seem to think it's at the detriment of others, perhaps it could be painful at first, but it could be the greatest thing that ever happens. When I look back at some of the most painful and traumatic experiences of my life, whether it was when I was very young, my parents separating, or that initial heartbreak or sickness, in hindsight, looking back, even if you just look back in 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, you understand that those deeply kind of life-shattering moments are your greatest gold. And that's when you start to unfurl that little bit more, and you become closer, to being that medicine woman, to being that goddess, to being that just unified human experience / soul
and then
that you're here to be.
And when you say it like that, it's like, that's awesome.
It is awesome.
But it's, and very simple.
So much.
Right. So like it's a simple equation. You will learn through lessons. The lessons won't always be easy, but it's not easy. It's not easy. It's just it's a very simple thing, but it's
painful and hard and life-crashing, life-shattering, dark and gloomy, but you're going to love it after.
Right.
We got to go through
it. Trust. But, thank you so much, Elise. There's so many wisdom nuggets that you shared with us. And I'm wondering if we closed up with like the other end of the spectrum, these young girls they don't even like, relationships and all of that is not there. What do you wish they could put in a bucket and take with them through the journey that maybe sometimes we lose as we're going, once we start dividing ourselves into these roles or these energies or these things? Is there something that you sometimes look back and you're like, wow?
For sure. Do your best. Your very best is what you can do in the moment, right? So just do your best. That's going to change all the time. But right now, do your best to also think of you and what's going to nourish your body, your heart, your soul, your mind. And that means boundaries. And as a young woman, this is one of the biggest challenges we face. We face boundaries because we think we need to give of our body for that boy to like us, that we need to kind of be a certain way to please our family, to please our friends and fit into that group. There's a lot of pleasing and giving away and very fluid boundaries that actually are to the detriment of your beautiful divine body, heart, mind, and soul. So when you face a challenge and you're like, this doesn't feel right with me, but I think he wants that or she wants that or they want that, honor your truth. Because there's certain times when you only have you to protect you. Women are on this earth, and ideally I see that as the men are supposed to protect us, that we can walk freely, entirely as ourselves upon this earth. The man's role is to protect, and the woman's role is then to open up her heart and give him that love, so we can have the beauty and the safety and the love and all this growth. It's a beautiful kind of circle of life. But often as a young woman, we don't feel safe in some capacity. It could be in a place, with a person, in an experience. So in that moment, honor your truth. If that means leaving, if that means saying no, if that means making a different choice, your choices are your choices. You have them. That is an entitlement. That is a right of a sovereign being that you are. That to me is one of the most beautiful, powerful things. And I wish that was more deeply instilled in me. And sometimes we need to hear that not just from women, but from men. It's challenging if also there's not a strong male role model in a woman's life. And I definitely didn't have one,
That's an important part to it too, because we need...
Very important.
It was easier when people had a distinct role, because then you knew where to look. Again, going back to, you knew where to look for it. And now that it's so much more fluid, there's good in that. But again, the duality, there's also, it makes it more our ownership to figure out ourselves so that we can see differences and similarities, regardless of the outside look of the person or the role they're playing in their family's life or the world's life or whatnot. But thank you so much for that. So, holding, I guess, onto your truth is
Absolutely.
what I'm hearing. Would be
honoring your boundaries and your power to say yes and no for what resonates and is right for you.
Beautiful. So I know we can find you at StellaMuse.com. Is there any place else, I guess, social media wise, or that you're really active? Where can we work with you if we're listening to you and we're like, oh my God, I want to get on the list for the book, or I want to get in touch with this woman?
You can absolutely contact me through StellaMuse.com. I've got a contact page there. You can shoot me an email. If you want to get on social media, I am on Instagram and Facebook. You can just search Stella Muse. There's also YouTube videos, but everything can be accessed from the website. So it's probably the best place to start. That's the easiest.
Well, thank you so much, Elise, for this conversation. I hope we stay in touch as connected sisters now, because I feel like at the time that's part of the inspiration. I don't know, I guess my guru just kind of talked to me one day and said, do this podcast, and it's just been really smooth sailing, and I've been just meeting such awesome people. So I think it's my connector to those ladies around, those other guys.
For sure.
Around.
We have to. I hear you. I'm going to launch mine. Probably by the time this comes out, I will. I am going to launch Sacred Guidance with Stella Muse. We need to have sometimes podcasts. We need to have articles. We need to have platforms that we can share. Because you've got all this wisdom in you, and a woman of 45 years, you have plenty of wisdom going from, Western medicine, making it more holistic. It's so important. And all of us have beautiful things to share. And if we can help each other rise, that is one of the greatest gifts of women.
Love
so
that.
I honor that in you.
Language. You're speaking the goddess wisdom 101. Love it. Well,
thank you for having me, Lisa.
Elise. I always I need to have a retreat, and I need to have all you ladies on, and we just need to hang, because I always feel like we need to do an after show and just hang out, because I'm massaging our feminine attributes of community and connection. But time has come. I do thank you so much. Make sure you guys check on the show notes. They'll have all the details that we were speaking of to connect with Elise, and on her website you can connect with her books and her articles and all of the rest of her yumminess and her programs. And please do think about some of those wisdom nuggets that she shared. Maybe if you have a young maiden in your home, or even your mothers, and helping them connect with some of this information, because like she said, together we rise, and on our own we fall. So we really, really do. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much for being here. I'm always honored to have my wonderful guests, and even more honored to have my wonderful audience. See you guys all next time for another Owning Her Health right now.
Thank you for listening into this episode of Owning Her Health with Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. To learn more about her personal and professional development service, visit her online at drlisahollandpt.com.